Welcome everybody here. We'll go ahead and get started. And I just, as we open up, I'll ask Senator Brass if he'd lead us in a word of prayer.
If you'll bow with me. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for this day and thank you for all that you do for us. And just please help give us guidance and wisdom and do everything in your name. Amen.
Amen. Thanks, sir. All right. Some of the presenters also of these bills also have other committee meetings and other, so we're going to move this around a little bit. I think what we'll do first is I'll go and call Senate Bill 42. Is anyone here just on behalf of Senator Mullis? If you'll come to the podium, please, and state your name and who you're with.
I'm with Educators First.
And currently with this bill, I think Senator Mullis has worked with people behind the scenes and come with a consensus. Is that my understanding on the LC 490396S?
Yes.
And then we also have Senator Tippins, who's not here yet, who is offering to amend that LC, and that's also in your folders as well. And Senator Mullis is okay with that language. Is that
That's correct?
Okay. And could you explain the changes that have been done since we were here last on Senate Bill 42?
Of course. So, Mr. Chair, thank you for allowing me this opportunity. The new substitute allows for each school district to present the disciplinary aggregated information electronically, and the amendment that Senator Tippins has proposed will also allow for that information to be asked for in person with copies at no charge.
Does anybody from the committee have any questions? Hearing no questions, we do have Pamela Korn that wanted to speak to this bill. Pamela Korn, oh, okay.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Yes, ma'am. Please state your name and where you're from, please.
Yes, my name is Pamela Perkins Carr, and I represent In Mass Incarceration Georgia Network. And thank you so much for allowing us an opportunity to come before you and the committee again on behalf of the community, which does not support, the community does not support Senate Bill 42 for various reasons. A number of the reasons, one of the reasons is that we're removing accountability from Senate Bill 42 removes accountability and transparency from the reporting of school disciplinary actions. Simply saying that the schools will report, they're already federally mandated to report. The fact is that the school climate rating allows for the community to see the environment that is created within a school. That's just one of the factors that's used in the school climate rating. The school discipline number, as this was explained by Georgia Appleseed, is part of a formula, and so an algebraic formula. And so simply removing the factor does not create a safe environment. Safe environments are created when we have positive behavior interventions and supports, restorative practices, which are all part of our ESSA plan, which is the Every School Succeeds Act, which is also part of the school climate rating, which is included in the ESSA plan. School discipline is a factor that's included within our ESSA plan that was approved by the Department of Education, the U.S. Department of Education. And so if we are having issues with school discipline, and I agree that yes, we are in some schools because we still have exclusionary discipline that's taking place, which feeds into the school to prison pipeline. And so as a DJJ, former DJJ professional, I know you understand the end of that pipeline is a child being incarcerated. And so for us to spend this kind of time on removing a factor that helps us to get resources to schools in order for them to understand the needs of the children in that particular school environment is not where our time and our energy is best placed. It's best placed at looking at those 140 some odd schools that still have a climate rating of 1 and 2. And so hopefully you received the spreadsheet that lets you know there's a number of assessment factors that go into the school climate rating. And not one of them is the sole basis for how a school is rated, how a school's climate is rated. And so we ask you to please take the time to do the due diligence, to understand what this means. This was not something that was done lightly. The community asked for the school discipline factor to be included in the school climate rating. And for good reason, because the community was concerned about the environment in which their students were educated. So please take the time that, and I will invoke his name again, Gary McGibbon, he says that we need to take when making decisions about the education of our children. So we implore you to withhold favorable consideration of SB 42. Take this time to really understand the emphasis that the school discipline factor has within the school climate rating and the priority that school climate rating has within our education plan, our statewide education plan. So thank you so much for this time, and be happy to take any questions.
Senator Jackson, do you have a question for the?
Yes. What organization is the young lady with?
It's in Mass Incarceration Georgia Network, and END, Mass Incarceration Georgia Network. We have over 400 individuals and organizations who are concerned about criminal and juvenile justice reform and education reform as it pertains to the school to prison pipeline. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I know that there's no, right now, I'll just go ahead and ask, is there anyone else that wishes to speak to 42, Senate Bill 42?
Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind, I would just like to say a few things and reply. With removing the discipline data from the current CCRPI scoring as described in Senate Bill 42 and the substitute, it does not take away the opportunities that we have with this PBIS program that we've been spending a lot of money on for several years. And all in all, it's not necessarily done as accurately as it should be, but if implemented correctly, it is a good program and does happen. So those are completely separate things to talk about versus the college and career ready index performance. One of the unintended consequences of this state reporting is that in an effort to improve schools and district CCRPI and STAR scores, teachers are being told by district and school administrators not to write kids up. So that's one of the less fortunate things, that the information isn't as accurate because they suffer consequences to implementing these disciplinary referrals. While this sounds admirable, it has not improved student behavior or the school climate. Although the data looks good, student behavior has not improved, and in many cases is worse because the student has no appropriate consequences. For example, a fight may downgrade to pushing and shoving, and that may not have been what had happened. Teachers are reporting higher levels of stress because they feel their hands are tied, and nothing is being done to support them with discipline issues. They are leaving the classroom in alarming numbers. We in the state of Georgia have a very difficult time with recruiting K through 12 educators. And I know that Governor Kemp has done a great job with doing things to help improve that and giving us tools to move forward. But this is one of those that we also need to have to be able to give our teachers something to secure their classrooms. And we ask for favorable consideration. Educators First, which is a teachers association. We represent K through 12 for all 181 school districts of Georgia. We have also, I believe that I've emailed each of the committee members a copy of the Department of Education's input on the legislation. And they also speak about how they recognize the challenges that exist with the inclusion of student discipline data in the school climate rating. It also says in there, condensing the school climate and school discipline to a simple rating by which ranks the schools encourages gaming and unhealthy comparisons. So if you guys, I believe everyone should have a copy of that information from the Georgia Department of Education. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There have been numerous presentations made, and I've received several emails, and most of them refer to PBIS. Can you explain that to me, please?
So PBIS is I believe it is a positive reinforcement program that we have, which gives rewards when the climate, the behavior and discipline is more so on a positive level versus having to implement number of write-ups. This is completely separate from PBIS. This is completely separate from PBIS. This is removing the discipline data from our college and career ready index scoring.
Is there someone from the Department of Education that can tell me how much we spend on, what is it, PBIS?
Yes, I believe Mr. Cardoza came
he here?
today. I know Ms. Taylor wasn't here. Oh,
Okay,
here we go.
thank you.
Carrie Pritchard with the department. I don't know exactly how much the budget line item is for PBIS, but I can get that for you.
I think I asked.
I think might have been
Yeah.
last time. And
Yeah.
I'll see if I can get an answer quickly.
Do we have any data on the program?
On the successes of PBIS,
Yeah.
I
'Cause it
believe that
seems
we
to
do
be-
have some. I know the RESAs have been working very closely with their regions to implement and have coaches to implement PBIS throughout the state.
Wow, okay, thank you.
Mhm.
No wonder they were-
Did we ever get an answer on what percentage of the CCRPI is made up of?
The school climate
Discipline.
is not included in CCRPI. The CCRPI score, which is the 0 to 100 rating, only includes milestones information and readiness for post or your next grade going up. Discipline is included in the school climate rating, which is a 1 through 5 scale, which is
Okay.
separate.
So just to be clear, taking this out is not going to affect.
CCRPI score.
Got it.
It just is that 5-star climate rating.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions from the committee?
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry I was late. I was tied up in another meeting. Is the bill or the LC you're considering or before us for approval, LC 490396S? Let me preface my remarks and say when this bill first came to us, the stated objective was to remove any discipline data from the 5-star rating. I've made lots of comments on that prior to now, but it was my understanding from the sponsor of the bill that they had no problem with disseminating that information that was in it, but they did not want it to be a part of the 5-star rating. And at the last meeting, I submitted a substitute that would reflect that. It was 0390S. I think 0396S needs an addition. I think the public transparency piece of it is lacking. I think each of you have a copy of an amendment that I'm proposing, and that is that on line 45, after the word 740, after the line 740, between 740 and in a format, I would insert on the copy I circulated that has or, that should be changed to and shall furnish a print copy of the specific information as reported for any particular school in the district to any requester at no charge. And instead of there being a period at the end, then it would pick back up in a format that can be easily understood by parents and other members of the community who are not educators. I'll say that is a huge piece. In my serving on the Board of Education, one of the first requests I have is that they would prepare a glossary of terms. Education speak is a lot different than most people are familiar with, so that's kind of a subjective statement and what's easily understood. But I think in having the discipline report available from the both posted on the county website, who receives it from the individual schools, and then also if someone requests the County Board of Education to give them a print copy of the discipline analysis of that particular school for the prior reporting period, it would be furnished to them in print copy at no cost. I am pretty adamant about that because you have a huge number of people in rural Georgia, as Senator Gooch knows, they don't have technology. Those that have broadband available to them many times do not have the technological skills to negotiate the websites that the DOE and from the state and also local districts may have. So you have in this, it's available in two forms. They can access it on the web if they like, or it can be furnished to them for a particular school at their request in print form. And I'd like to offer that as an amendment to 490396S. And
Are you changing your amendment now, because now what you brought it in there earlier says or shall furnish, and you know you're saying and?
yes, because they will put it on the website, and the and is they shall furnish it to any requester at no charge. And those people who cannot access it on the website can make a request of it from the county.
And I have talked to the Bill's office, she has no problem with that amendment.
Okay.
That's what I understand too.
My understanding is this amendment accomplishes what he said he intended to do in the bill originally, which was to remove the discipline assessment from the 5-star rating.
Okay, but just to clarify, this is to add an amendment to on LC 490396S line 45 after the number 740 to add and shall furnish a print copy of the specific information as reported for any particular school in the district to any requester at no charge.
And strike that period because the sentence then picks up in a format after that, so that this will be added right after 740.
Okay. If I do what?
Move motion to amend.
Do I have a second on that amendment? I have a second. All those in favor of this amendment, please signify by raising your hand. And it looks to be you. Thanks, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Now we are moving on as a substitute, committee substitute. We're moving on LC 490396S as a substitute with the aforementioned change. I'm prepared to take a motion. I have a motion from Senator Albers. Do I have a second?
Second.
Who was that? Senator Tippins was second. Any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. All those opposed? And that bill passes. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Senator Tippins, for your input as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Now we'll move on to Senate Bill 59. Senator Albers. present your bill, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen of the committee, it is an honor to present Senate Bill 59 to you today. Let me begin by thanking former Senator Dan Weber, who is here, who I believe will speak, and the great work he does, the Georgia Department of Education, as well as I also am fortunate enough to have Dr. Looney here, Superintendent of Fulton County Schools. Both my boys went to elementary, middle, and high school, graduated through Fulton County Schools, and while I'm sure everybody thinks theirs the best, I'm confident we have the #1 charter system in the entire country in Fulton County. Today, I lost my microphone. Test. There we go. Today you've got a bill in front of you that has got several different sections. I'm going to take a moment and walk you through all of these. The first section relates to the funding differences we have between a charter system and a locally approved charter school. Back several years ago, when we were encouraging charter systems to come into play, we had a rate set that allowed for a funding rate of 3.785% off the QBE formula for students that were enrolled in that charter system. The difference was for a local charter school that they were at 3%. So there's a difference between those two numbers. What we want to do is keep parity to make things all equal. So what this will do is for the locally approved charter schools, beginning the year, fiscal year 2023, so not the budget we'll pass this year for July, but the next one, it will take them up to be equal at that 3.785%. That is a very small appropriation of about $3 million and change. We do have a fiscal note in the old part of this bill, but this is a change from the original version of the bill where we thought about bringing them down. Instead, both of them are bringing up, and I want to again thank all the parties in the room today for working with us to come up with what we believe to be a really good solution and compromise for funding. The next section to this bill have to do with the state health benefit plan. So when a charter school begins today and they apply for and receive their charter, which is typically a 5-year time, they have the option at that time to opt into the state health benefit plan. But that's a one-time and forever choice. So if they chose no, they never get another bite at the apple. Well, in 5 years from then, when they're going to renew their charter, this simply gives them the opportunity to make another choice. And I would hope that we would want to continue to take care of our educators and those who may want to join the state health benefit plan. So again, things would be equal. But this just gives them simply the opportunity at the point of the charter renewal to do that same thing. Section 4 has to do with funding. When dollars come from the federal government and are sent down to different agencies, specifically now for education in schools, this is just simply making sure that the dollars are coming down and transparent, that if they're coming down through, that they will be equally distributed to the schools as well. And then last but certainly not least are pertaining to facilities on Section 5. In that instance, if a charter school is looking for a building, a facility, it allows them to work with the local school system and assure that if there is an empty school, that they have access to use that. Now, I want to thank Senator Parent. She and I were talking just before this and working with several others, and I know she brought up a very good point, and we want to perfect an amendment for that we've just decided may not be appropriate to do right now because we want to work out T's and C's, but we agreed that it will be a friendly amendment we'll do together on the Senate floor when this hopefully makes it out of this committee and out of the Rules Committee. And that will simply say that it's kind of a two-way street, that if a facility is available, that the charter school will use it, not just opt for local funding, but if that facility happens to be 1/8 the size they need or it's 60 miles away, that might not work, right? So it's just it's a matter of working out common sense. And I will tell you, the reason for this specifically is while most school systems have been very good with helping out their charters, some have not. And what they might do as an example is say, well, we've got this mothball school over here. But because you want it, we're going to go move 2 people from the central office and put them in there, or park a bus outside, say now it's a bus depot or an office, right? We want to prevent those things from happening, but again, making sure people are doing the great things. Again, I want to point to my great example of Fulton County Schools, who has done a great job, both as a system as well as the local charter schools that reside within that. So that is a quick summary of the bill. I'm sure there'll be some questions, but I wanted to outline each section, Mr. Chairman, so I would yield for questions.
Thanks, sir. Do any committee members have any questions? I'm seeing no questions from the committee. However, we do have others that wish to speak to the bill. And so I'll go ahead and call Bonnie Holliday from Georgia Charter Schools Association.
Yes, sir. Thank you. GCSA supports this bill and all the provisions in the bill. We're grateful to Senator Albers for championing this bill. There is still some inequities that exist between charter schools and their traditional counterparts. And, you know, I just want to remind the committee that charter school students are public school students. And most of the provisions in this bill are focused on locally approved charter school students. So those students in particular go to public schools in the district that have been sanctioned, approved, and authorized by the district. So any of the provisions to support them are intended to support the overall health of the district as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Peter Mcknight, Drew Charter School.
Good afternoon, committee and Senator Parent from our home district. It's my pleasure. I'm the Peter Mcknight head of school for Drew Charter School and come to bring my support for Senate Bill 59. I think it's hard to overstate the academic and social emotional impact that the pandemic has had on our students and will continue to have on our students. And so having equitable funding moving forward and having maximum flexibility with our funding and our resources is going to be really important for years to come to support our students and beyond that. So having the QBE funding, bringing that equitable between charter systems and charter schools will be provide us with additional per pupil resources to meet the needs of our kids and our community. And again, that will be tremendously important for us moving forward. In addition, having the flexibility around federal funding really allows us to use our autonomy to best use those resources to meet the needs of our students, which again, I think is aligned with our work as charter schools and ensures that, again, we have the flexibility to use those resources efficiently and have full transparency to coordinate those for services for our students. I would also advocate for the access to the state health plan benefits. Particularly as one of the older charter schools in the city, our opportunity came a long time ago. But as we see the impact, particularly on our older staff members who see a gap between retirement with us and Medicare and so forth, having an opportunity to participate in the state plan would be particularly helpful for us in terms of retaining particularly our more senior staff members and so forth. So again, appreciate the opportunity to bring support for the bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Next, we have Delano Reeves. Hope I'm pronouncing that right.
It's okay. You're close. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for allowing me the time to speak. My name is Delano Reeves. So you're close. And I'm the school leader of Westside Atlanta Charter School. I am definitely in full support of the bill. Thank you for bringing it. So as a school leader, having the equitable funding is extremely important. As Bonnie mentioned, we are public schools. I am authorized, or my school is authorized through Atlanta Public Schools, and they have been a great partner for my particular school in providing a facility. But having the actual equivalent QBE, what it will do, and the flexibility as Peter mentioned, what it will do for me as a school leader is I'll provide for you an example. So if I was in a traditional public school as the principal, my main concern would be focused on the education, curriculum, instruction of the students. As a charter school, my responsibilities include the instruction, but it also includes all of the operational cost. So if there's an issue with my building, then I am responsible as the school leader to get it repaired. So getting our facility up to speed in times of COVID, we are open, cost us a lot of additional funding that I had to go out and try to fundraise to make up the difference for. Our HVAC system blew up. So once we thought we had come up with everything that our students needed instructionally, we had some other hurdles. And so if we were allowed to have this additional money, it would definitely come in handy. So I really appreciate your consideration for it, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next, we have Barry Lawlence. Please state your name and where you're from.
Hi, my name is Barry Lawless. I am have been an educator in Georgia for 20 years, public school educator. In 15 of those years, I've served as a leader of a school in traditional schools, the charter system schools, and I currently serve as the executive director of Savannah Classical Academy. I bring you greetings from all 5 locally approved charter schools in Savannah, and we all support this bill. There are critical components of this that senators talked about earlier, and I just want to kind of talk about some nuances of that and how that will critically help many of the charter schools. Of course, additional QBE allotments to help us support our children will level some of the playing field for our students in the locally authorized charter schools. Also, allowing us to opt into the state health benefit program. My school could not afford to opt into the state health benefit program. We're on our 2nd renewal. We'll go up for renewal again in 2024. As my teaching staff begins to age, I begin to age. When we retire out and we are able to have that state health benefit program, many of us will leave charters and go to a traditional school just to retire. That's going to leave a hole in the charter school, and it's going to leave a hole in the traditional school, and it's gaming the system. And so we have an opportunity of fixing that, and we can have us paying into the system, and then instead of going in and retiring out after a year or 2 or less, 30 days is all that's required, then we can be part of that state health benefit program. It will help us retain and keep quality teachers, especially in charter schools that are serving majority of underprivileged students. So we need those high quality teachers to attract and retain them. Then I'd also like to speak about the facility funds. So as a locally approved charter school, our children are part of the local facility plan. Those numbers are submitted to the state, and the state earns capital credits for their buildings and facilities. The local system also has eSPLOST funds, and charters are not specifically listed in eSPLOST funds. And our county, the last 2 SPLOSTs and the current one up, charters were not included after specifically being asked to be included into the eSPLOST program to help us with our facilities. When districts earn these capital credits, they're earning capital credits based off our children enrolled in our schools, but then that capital benefit is not sent back down to us in a local charter school, especially those of us that are not in a school-owned building. And we're not in a school-owned building. We're in a leased-owned building, and just like my colleague said, if the window breaks, if the air conditioner breaks, we're responsible for doing that out of our operational budget, and we cannot fall on the eSPLOST funds or other revenues to help us with that. So I implore you to really think about this, and it is a great help to local authorized charter schools to help us level the playing field and have those extra opportunities and supports for the public school children that we serve in our communities that are part of the local school system. We should be partnering with our local school system, and local school systems should not be speaking against this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next, Davion Lewis. Did I pronounce that right?
Close enough. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and committee members. Davion Lewis, Executive Director of the Rise Schools, which is located in East Point. We are currently in our 2nd charter term. We are a network of 2 schools, 1 elementary school, Rise Grammar, 1 middle school, Rise Prep, and we serve a total of about 820 students. Approximately 72% of our scholars are qualified for free and reduced meal programs. So that tells you a little bit about the population that we serve. Now, I would be remiss to not remind everyone that if there's nothing that this pandemic has really shown us is the importance of equity, right? It's really been the word of the last 12 months or so. And what this bill does is to bring equity to the charter school communities. When we look at having the option to opt into the state health benefit plan, healthcare is a concern. As a charter school, we pay approximately 55% of the premiums for our staff of approximately 100 folks. And that is a pretty large sum of money. Now, having the opportunity to participate in the state health benefit plan gives us options that we currently don't. And so this would be a good thing not only for RISE, but for the wider charter school community. My colleague spoke very eloquently about facilities, and that is something that is much of a concern for us as well. Now, we are fortunate to own our facility, which we purchased directly from Fulton County Schools, as it was vacant at the time. But again, the cost for maintaining our own facilities is quite hefty. One of my colleagues talked about what happens when something breaks. I can tell you what happens when 2 summers ago you're having parent orientation and there are 500 parents in the building in August, and the AC unit breaks down. And you have all these parents in the building, and people start sweating, and you have to scramble, and you run to Home Depot, and you pick up fans and what have you. To replace that chiller for us was a little over $200,000 that we had to come out of pocket to pay for. To give you some context, over $250,000, that's approximately 3.5 really highly qualified teachers in terms of salary for the year. That's the cost of having a overnight trip to DC for all 3 of my grade levels so that they can do some project-based learning. So the money that we spend on facilities takes away money that we would spend otherwise going directly to our students. And again, thinking back to the theme of equity, those fundings that are federal dollars travels with the student. If you are a student and you're going to, let's say, Camp Creek Middle School in Fulton County and you transfer to Bear Creek, that money travels with the student. It doesn't stay at Bear Creek Middle. It goes with the student to Camp Creek, as well as all the services that the student is entitled to. And so as a public school, we would want all of those fundings, not a portion of it, but all of those fundings to travel with the student when they come to us or when they go to any other charter school, because we are in fact public schools. So I thank the committee for considering this bill. It would be beneficial to our community and to all the charters across the state. And Mr. Chairman, I thank you for the opportunity to speak before you and the committee. Thank you.
Next, I'm going to call Robert Costley.
Good afternoon. I want to thank the committee. Senator Albers, I want to make sure that we clarify we haven't seen the substitute. Part of our opposition to the bill was based on the funding for charter systems. And I want to make sure, just if it's okay, if I could clarify, my testimony will get a lot shorter regarding the sub. Thank you, sir. If that is the case, if we're raising the appropriation to 3.7 for or 3.7 for everybody, one, we thank you, sir. We think that's extremely fair, and we appreciate that. And the reason for that is we want to celebrate the work of the charter systems in Georgia. When they originally went after the charter systems, the state made a commitment to them, and they've really delivered. I know several of you represent charter systems, so again, thank you for that, because again, that is supporting the charter idea. The one piece that we have concerns with is Section 5. I don't think that's a surprise. Section 5 involves a stipend that would be paid annually, apparently, based on a formula. It is not clear to us what the impact that would actually have on your local systems or the systems of other senators. One thing we would like to ask, if it would be possible, is to run a simulation with the Georgia Department of Education, just so that we're clear about what kind of financial commitment that local systems would be paying annually to the local charters. That's something, again, that they, that was part of the deal. When they approved those local charters, they were not aware at some point there would be a bill that would come later and ask them to pay an annual stipend. They were required to pay startup funds, et cetera, which is being struck through with this bill. Just maybe it's seen as in good faith to those systems that approved those local charters who did not anticipate that they might be paying an annual stipend. If we could at least run those simulations so that they could ask some good questions before that bill is passed, we would just appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
And next we'll hear from Scott Bierman.
Good afternoon. Thank you all. Scott Bierman with the Georgia School Board Association. My comments would kind of mirror Buddy Costley's from me prior. The Georgia School Board Association doesn't support this bill, mainly because of the Section 5 funding issue, the facility issues. And I think we would kind of ask the Senate to take a look at perhaps boosting up the charter schools facility grant and bringing that from the state level instead of coming from the local district up. I think that would kind of solve both issues, protect the funding at the local level, but also give the charter schools the funding they're looking for. Appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Thank you. And Dr. Looney?
Mike Looney, Fulton County Schools. Mr. Chairman, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, Senator Albers, thank you so much for your support and the hard work that you're doing. Fulton County Schools happens to be one of those districts that has a long, successful relationship with the charters that we are partnering with. We have 10 locally authorized and supported local charters. We appreciate Senator Albers' work on this bill and collaboration to try to make the bill stronger. In general, we support the principles of all sections. We do have some clarifying language that we're trying to work through with Senator Albers, and I think none of those are fatal issues, but issues that we can work through before they get on the Senate floor. So in general, we're thankful and we're very supportive of Senator Albers and his collaborative effort. We do believe it's important to have equity and access in all of our schools, and we look forward to continuing this partnership.
I do, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you so much for being here and raising your testimony. So my question is, and maybe it's not something that you want to elaborate on, but your statement was a little bit vague. I would like to know what.
Yes, ma'am. There are two issues,
right.
One in Section 4 and one in Section 5. Section 5 specifically, the funding that is allocated for the capital outlay money lags the appropriation. And so we seek clarity in that section of the bill, perhaps to say something to the effect that it would be prior year capital outlay funding. What we don't want to do is get into a position where we're using local fund, general fund dollars to fund a requirement that the legislature has approved that is going to be ultimately paid from a different source. Capital outlay, that is, rather than general fund. So if it could say prior or last year's capital outlay funds, there's no clarity there. And then I can give you an example of Section 4. I will take exception to the gentleman that spoke about the funding follows the student, and I'll use IDEA funds, federal funds for special education students specifically. And so we as an institution are required to make sure that students with disabilities are getting FAPE, free and appropriate education, even in a charter environment. And that money does not come in a per pupil allocation. It comes in in the form of programs, and while the federal government already does not fully fund IDEA, we still are required by law to make sure they're getting the appropriate services. So rather than allocating money on a per pupil ratio, a proportionate ratio, we need to be examining the programming that's needed. As an example, does that charter school have enough students that need OT services for us to provide those services rather than dollars? Because at the end of the day, the district has to make sure that the services are provided, and we can't hold the charter schools accountable for providing the services if we're turning the funds over to them.
CFO. Can I ask a follow-up question, Mr. Chair? Thank you. So I, in general, really like locally chartered schools.
Yes, ma'am.
I think that that's a good framework for having charter schools, although I don't oppose the state chartered ones either. But I guess I've heard some dispute, and I'm just interested, you just happened to be up here when I thought about it, so.
Yes, ma'am.
There seems to be like a little bit of a dispute from what I'm hearing between some people saying, well, this district is playing games with calling facilities unavailable when really they're like making them unavailable. And I guess I'm trying to get your opinion on, well, that doesn't seem acceptable to me. You know, if someone is truly playing a game, and these are locally chartered, which is a good thing. And then if someone's, you know, messing around with, we don't really feel like handing over a building though, that I'm not that sympathetic to that. But I don't know if I see clarity in the bill about what if there really is no building available. So
Yes, ma'am. Once again, from my perspective, it's not the issue of whether or not we have to collaborate with a charter provider to potentially use a vacant facility. It's when does that stipend get paid in relationship to when we actually receive the money from the state in capital outlay dollars.
So you're saying it's on a lag of a year?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And so, with that being said, I would be naive if I were to say that, you know, every school district is operating in good faith all the time across the United States with charters. I can say in Fulton County schools specifically, we have multiple charters operating within our buildings, and we have a great partnership. I would make the point that ultimately the authority rests in the citizens of a local community to determine whether the board is acting appropriately or not.
Thank you.
All right, for the sake of time, everyone else is on the list who signed up in favor of this bill, but I think so we don't need to have a repetition of people come to speak, but I just want to announce Dan Weber of Charter System Education is for Dr. Michelle Taylor of Towson City Schools, Dana Springfield, Brayden Springfield, and Davin Springfield. Those are the ones that were remaining to sign up. For the sake of time, I think we'll just.
If I may, I'd like to ask the sponsor of the bill a question, please. Mr.
Yes,
Chairman, I appreciate your efforts in this. Is it not true that according to the provisions provided in House Bill 787, that currently well over 50% of the students in public schools in Georgia today receive less combined total in state funding than what students in charter schools currently receive?
Senator, you being the expert on that, I will defer to your knowledge and wisdom.
Well, I know when 787 was passed, and we talk about equity, I remember specifically Jeff Davis County was receiving about $1,500 a student less than what the charter school students are paid, and the reason for that is charter schools funded on an assessment of whatever level it is, that's what they receive. And sadly in the state we have winners and losers, and of course we have differences in the programs that are delivered, but when we talk about equity, bear in mind, unless things have changed drastically in 3 years' time, and I don't think the formula has changed, over 50% of the public school students receive less total state and federal funding than the charter school students do.
Mr. Chairman, both. Could I ask Bonnie to come back up, because I think she's a resident expert, just to answer that question with me? Would you mind?
So you may do that.
Thank you.
Sure. So for state charter school students in particular, compared to the state average, they pull $900 less per pupil. For locally approved charter schools, there are currently 15 districts in Georgia that are authorizing local charter schools. The charters pull less per pupil in 13 out of those 15 districts.
I would point out in that I think that's reference to as an average. That's what I'm pointing out. It going to the 50th percentile of the districts, then you're talking about the average. You have many, many students that are paid less than that. You have some very disproportionately high-funded students that makes that average higher. But 50%, over 50% of the students in the state receive less local and state funding than charter schools currently get. Just a point of information. Or maybe it's a question. I'm supposed to ask a question, am I not?
Yes.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to go back and revisit the ask about state health benefits. And I guess I do have an ask. Upon entering into a charter agreement, and I don't know who asked about who was talking about his state health benefits plans.
I believe that was Savannah who was talking about that. But continue, I might be able to answer your question.
When you entered into the agreement, because I'm sure there was some agreement made between the district, the school district, and the charter school, what options were given at that point?
Certainly.
Did you have any?
Yes, ma'am. There's the rule is a state health benefit program rule. It's not a state law or anything or Board of Education policy. It's just a rule of the state health benefit program that within 6 months of applying for your initial charter, you have to declare whether you want to be part of the state health benefit program. And if you do not declare at that time, you cannot opt back in at a later time. And charters such as ours, because of the upstart and the cost of those, it wasn't financially feasible for us to do that and still have the programmatic choices we needed for our students. So we opted to have an in-house state health benefit program that is of less cost, but we would like to opt back into that program so we can recruit and retain our teachers.
Same problem that public schools are having, I guess, retaining teachers. Thank you.
All right. Any other discussion from the committee?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to pass Senate Bill 59 by substitute.
Second. Senator Bill. And this is LC 490346.
Correct.
I have a first and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hand. All those opposed? And it passes 5-4.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
The chair can only vote to bring a tie.
Yes, sir. Okay, I stand correct. I was counting myself, but I didn't mean because I was trying to use an example. But, okay, we'll revote that. For all those in favor, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. For all those opposed, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, and 4. So the motion passes 5-4.
Mr. Chairman, what LC number did you call the vote on?
I'm sorry, I misread that LC. I stand corrected. It was LC 49041S.
That's right.
Thank you, sir.
Do what? We can do that if we need to.
Mm-hmm.
I think all right. Now we'll move on to Senate Bill 51.
Yeah.
Senator Bruce Thompson.
It passed.
Please come forward and read your bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know there's members of the committee that have another committee meeting, so I'll move as expeditiously as possible. We've seen this bill before, Senate Bill 163. It was named the Tim Tebow Bill in the past. And simply what we're seeking to do is to provide access for homeschoolers to be able to participate in extracurricular activities of the school that's in their district. A lot of things have changed since Senate Bill 163. We've gone through a COVID situation where many families have been impacted that weren't impacted in the past. It's interesting when we have a pandemic and we have a lot of stress that's applied to the people of Georgia, how it brings people together. I think the committee will see that in the past, not always has Dr. Hines and I been able to work collaboratively, but you're going to hear here we have collaborated on this bill, and we're working together to make sure the families in the various communities have the opportunity to be able to participate. We've renamed the bill the Dexter Mosley Act, and his lovely widow will be here to testify as well as we go through this. But if it's a pleasure, the chairman, I'd like Cole Muzio to step up. He can take us through this bill pretty quick if we can, and then be able to allow those people that you would allow to testify and then possibly move forward, if that's okay.
Well, thank you. I'm Cole Muzio, president of Family Policy Alliance of Georgia. And as Senator Thompson mentioned, we've covered this concept before in this committee. Passed in 2019, then passed the Senate chamber with a strong bipartisan majority. But I'm going to go through real quick just some changes that we've seen since then. And I'm happy to answer any questions if that's what the committee wants to do. But the bill obviously begins with a series of definitions. One of the more pertinent ones being extracurricular activities, defined on lines 26 through 35. And this bill does build on the work that Chairman Rick Jaspers over in the House did last year when he introduced this bill and passed it in his committee. It builds on that from there. So extracurricular activities defined, this is not just a sports bill. This is a bill to, end discrimination in our state against homeschool students and allow them to participate in all extracurricular activities available only at their public school and that cannot be replicated as well outside of that. Lines 42 through 48 build a new concept in this bill. And one of the things that we try to do is take the comments made in this committee and others as we've heard feedback over the years and try to incorporate that. And I think Rick Jaspers did a great job in doing that. But this builds a new concept that puts kids kind of a little bit more with some buy-in in the school system. And this was a concept that Rick Jaspers introduced, and we've kind of refined here in this bill. This bill outlines 3 mechanisms where a student has additional academic requirement for participation. One is taking a course with the Georgia Virtual School. Another is through dual enrollment. And thirdly would be an on-site course that would be required for participation for the extracurricular activity. So if you're in band and you have to take music to be in band, or you got to take weightlifting to play football, that satisfies this requirement. So it's an additional course requirement, whereas previously we required a parental signature on the academic progress of the student. Our organization has supported the previous version of this bill, but we support this version as well. Lines 49 through 52 are important to make this abundantly clear. This is not a tool for athletic recruitment. This is, the kids are going to play where they would otherwise go to school. They would participate in the school they would otherwise attend. Lines 64 through 69 address academic requirements, how that is affirmed by the parents, and also how it must meet the requirements for participating in the sport. This is not, again, a bill that would circumvent academic requirements. In the past, there have been questions about whether the child would have to meet the same rules as other kids. Will they be disciplined? Would they have to try out? This bill outlines that in a little bit more clarity on transportation, discipline measures, criteria for participation, including tryouts. All those apply, same as a regular public school student in this bill. That's lines 73 through 87. We don't want this to be viewed in any way as a way to circumvent academics. This language in this concept bill has gone back and forth between 6 months and 12 months of ineligibility upon leaving public school and going homeschool. This bill puts it at 12 months, but does allow to have a hardship waiver. So if, and that they would go through the same process as any other hardship waiver that's outlined. Whereas they opt to go homeschool, and then they could still apply to play, but by default they'd be ineligible for 12 months upon exiting the public school system. It's important we get this done this year for a lot of reasons. These kids are waiting. Every year that goes by is a year that they can't participate in these extracurricular activities that their tax dollars pay for, that cannot be replicated in any other way. And it's a really, it's something that we see all around the country. The vast majority of states have this. Every other Southeast state has a version of this. And it's time to get this done for these kids. So I'm happy to answer questions. I know we're short on time, but if you have questions for me, I'm happy to answer them. All right, thank you. God bless y'all.
Thank you. Cole did a great job of breaking the bill down. And the first thing I would say, I'm the executive director of the Georgia High School Association, and I'm certainly happy to be here to speak to this. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that if we polled all of our schools that we would have a majority that would say, we're for this bill. However, I want to say that the eligibility of students in member schools represents many things. And right now, it doesn't represent homeschool students at this time, but it's not a far leap from the way things are happening now. And before I go any further, I want to thank Bruce Thompson for visiting with me and for his perseverance on this. It's we've been working on this for 4 years. But anyway, in our public school system, we have magnet schools, specialty schools, charter schools. You've heard a lot about charter schools here. We've got dual enrollment students. All may be eligible at the school where the student's attendance zone is, where they are. So that is already happening. We do have students that have not entered the high school for which they participate, believe it or not. They may be 100% duly enrolled and those sorts of things. Now, one thing that I have talked with Senator Thompson about, and we'll continue to be in contact and work through, but the defined resident school and resident school system, it seems like it's used interchangeably, and I would say that should this thing move forward, then it needs to be where the school lives is the school zone for which they would participate. I believe the bill generally works toward equal requirements for public and homeschool students alike, which I have not been able to say before. This time, requiring qualifying course indicates a commitment to the school. The eligibility is accounted for, and that was one of the major things that we had issues with in the past. I'm assuming that enrollment in the appropriate amount of classes for all students would be there, which would be 2.5 units currently, 2.5 units past the previous semester, and the appropriate amount of units accumulated for the appropriate year of participation, and meets all other requirements for participation. The code of conduct is accounted for, and tryouts and finance, and they're equal for all. The school would even probably earn a little FTE money, for the students there. And I would like to mention one thing that we've got to work out is the local control issue on decision-making process. I do believe that local board members are duly elected, and they should be able to make decisions on what's best for their systems. For example, we have specialty schools in our state, such as like math and science magnets, and there are some systems that allow those students to participate at their home school now. There are others that don't, and that's just one point that I would like to bring up. I believe the best decisions are made locally. I believe that when I was a superintendent. I certainly believe it now, and would like to remain consistent with that. But I would say that this bill has come a long way the past few years, and to clear up the local school and the local district concern and allow local control, I have no objections and appreciate the work that has gone into this bill. It has come a long, long way. Throughout this process these last 4 years, I've made a lot of friends on both sides of the issue, and I appreciate that. But other than the two items previously mentioned, it's time for us to move in this direction, and I believe that's where we are. I believe that's where our association is heading, and And because at our core, what we are about is providing opportunities for young people.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
You have no questions? For the sake of time also, I'll just go ahead and state there's two others to speak to the bill that are in favor, and that is Ms. Mosley and Karen Darniche. And so yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, this bill was drafted after Ms. Mosley, and if the pleasure of the committee, just give her the opportunity as a widow just to speak for just a couple of minutes.
I'll
She's
allow you
brought
that
here.
discretion, sir.
Ms. Mosley, can you come and speak just for a moment? We do have a time frame, so.
Thank you, Chairman, for allowing me this opportunity to speak, and other senators. My name is Chanel Mosley, and as you know, the bill is named after my husband, being named after my husband, Dexter Mosley, which he was an avid sportsman, played sports throughout high school and college, and we have 6 children that we've always had in sports activities. My husband realized, and I do realize also, that sports is not just a game, it is a life skill, and we want just the equal opportunity to be able to participate. Since we are spending money, we came on a hardship. My husband had received a heart transplant, came into difficulty, and here we are, 3 swimmers and football players trying to come out of our pockets with expensive. It became an obstacle for us. We want it to be a community, and I just want you to give us the opportunity to just come together as we have during the academics of COVID. We've reached out to the public schools as homeschool moms to try to support them, and we just want the support of being able to participate in the public school activities also. I have a quote I'll leave with you. Helen Keller says, I can't, I'm shaking, sorry. But I looked up, she says, alone we can do so little, but together we can do much. And I think as a community coming together, as homeschoolers, charter schools, public schools, whatever schools, just parents coming together and letting their kids participate in all type of extracurricular activities is only a positive for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Mosley. Senator Vittori.
I just briefly want to make a comment. Just first thank Ms. Mosley for being here and making those comments today. Also, second, do want to thank the Georgia High School Association for working with Senator Thompson on this bill. I will raise my hand and say I've been on both sides of issues with you, but I want to thank you for making the effort and working with the senator to get us this far over this period of time. So I want to thank you for that. That's all, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Albers.
Appropriate time, I'd like to make a motion to pass.
I'll accept that motion to pass. A second. I'm sorry?
No one's opposed.
No, sir. There's no one signed up.
Second.
I have a second. Yes, sir?
You said no one's opposed to the bill?
No one has signed up to speak to it. It was opposed.
You mind?
All right.
Keep it that way, Senator.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor of LC 490346, please raise your hand. I'm not. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We have 7. All those opposed? 1, 2.
You don't like this?
Thanks, sir, and your bill passes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I appreciate the hard work on this. And again, I appreciate Dr. Hines and Ernie for the support on this as well.
I think that.
So I don't, without that resolved, I feel like,
Thank you. I do have, if you look in your folders, I'm not prepared to take any action today on Senate Bill 3, but I did want to go ahead and point out to everyone that there is, on Senate Bill 3, there is a Phyllis? We had a...
That's a substitute. Yes, sir.
Yeah, and I'm looking for... Where's the fiscal note on this? Did I leave it, Ma? Oh, there it is. I wanted to bring to everyone's attention on Senate Bill 3. There is a fiscal note in your file, and we did have that done and updated. And I just wanted to bring that to everyone's attention at this point, just so you'd be considerate as we move forward. I think that we've all concerned, that this is something we need to continue to look at, how we can make sure that we're getting those kids that are falling through the cracks so many times, that we're making sure that we're not leaving those behind as well. And so that's our hope in this, and we'll continue to move forward. Let's see, mic number 3. Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir, Mr. Chairman. I present to you Senate Substitute to Senate Bill 3. I'm working off of LC 490419S. It's it started off a very simple bill, but I'm telling you, Mr. Chairman, it is a bill that many legislators have worked on. I think the Department of Education, Department of Technical Education, to come in and help us perfect this bill. Things our children cannot do at age 16. Our children at age 16, they can't vote, they can't drink alcohol, they can't smoke, they can't get tattoos, they can't get credit cards, they can't join the military. They can't really have a reasonable paying job. This bill, raising the dropout age from 16 to 17, gives one more condition of things they cannot do. They cannot drop out of school. The condition of young people staying in school at the age of 17 really helps the student. And this does not say they get to leave public school. They get the option of leaving traditional school and going to a dual enrollment school. When you read through the bill, it allows students to get a waiver to take dual enrollment courses at the at technical schools or other supporting schools to make sure that they can have an opportunity so they can get a livable wage. In your files, you see a physical note, and the physical note, if you read the second paragraph, $12.7 billion is the cost of this bill, and it's determining by multiplying the student dropout. I don't think it's really a cost of $7.2 million, although this is what the physical note says. When you add up the cost of what it costs to incarcerate a young man or young woman in the juvenile detention, what it costs when you look at the people that are incarcerated in our jails and in prisons, and you ask them the percentage of them that have graduated high school is dismal. We think when you give people a opportunity to get a GED, to go to technical school, to get a technical skill or a vocational skill, they stay out of prison, they stay out of juvenile detention center, and they pay taxes. I think this is a time for raising the dropout age. I think the time is near, and I urge your favorable consideration. I'll take any questions, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to thank Senator Jackson for having this discussion. I think I'll be honest, as I've told him and others, that I do have some hesitation in terms of raising the compulsory age from 16 to 17 unless we're doing something to help those students and individuals who maybe being kind of forced to drop out because of work or having to take care of their family and truly want to lift themselves up. I think this committee substitute kind of begins that conversation in terms of where we're going as a state in terms of offering job training programs through the technical college system, but other providers of technical education, workforce development, such as Community Christian Council that's in Tallapoosa, Georgia, that's a recipient of WIOA funds, Goodwill of North Georgia, and other organizations that are in many of our communities and urban and rural communities across the state. My thought is this, is that if we can build workforce programs for people who are in prison, then what are we doing to basically help those individuals who maybe are trying to avoid prison or make a better life for themselves and lift themselves up, and offer that job training and those wrap services for these individuals and families to be successful. So I just want to thank Senator Jackson for the effort that's been made in this, and That's pretty much it. I support the committee substitute.
Okay. And Mr. Chairman, I want to thank the Senator of the 31st for working with me on this bill. He brought insight with this raising the dropout age. He has truly made it a bipartisan measure, and he's added measures that these young men have and women have somewhere to go to get a viable occupation, so they can have a livable wage, and they can be not only tax-paying citizens, but they can be a benefit of this great state.
Well, I'll just go ahead and add to that if I can, just, and say that, on our first meeting and chair my first committee meeting here in this committee, I made the statement that if we kept our focus on every child, K through 12, it'll be amazing what we can actually do. And I just want to thank both of you for working together. We'll continue to look at this and see if we can improve upon it, and just, because at the end of the day, there's no such thing as any kid that should be deemed expendable. And I think that that's, especially for the age of 16, they've not even started asking the right questions about life yet. And so, you're allowing them just to throw their life away so many times that when they've not really, they have no concept of the consequences of their actions at that age in so much regard. So I want to continue to study this and continue to look at this, and hopefully, we can move forward at some point. But I just think we'll just continue to working on it and bring it back to the table. And I'm actually inspired by, especially the two of you on this committee working on this bill, because of the work that you're doing. I just thank both of you publicly for what you're doing, because if it's going to have to be a people solution, a solution that really matters to people. And when in the long run, I know there's a lot of numbers on fiscal notes, and I know that there's things that we all have to take in consideration, but this is a big consideration. So I just ask everybody on this committee just to be honest to that, and let's continue to work through this and see if we can come to an achievable measure in the end of this. So thank you, Senator, and thank you, Senator. And I
just want to make one comment.
Yes, sir.
To the fiscal note, I believe it says $12 million. Just in terms of the big picture, I think in terms of the impact on these students and other families, I think to where Senator Jackson was going, I think in terms of the economic input, in terms of keeping the kids not just in school, but I think offering what this bill does in terms of a waiver, workforce program, job training, to even expose them to allow to potentially even create and start their own businesses in many of our communities. The revenue over time that this potentially could generate or anything, I think, is greater than us constantly throwing government tax dollars at a problem and never seeing it fixed. So I just wanted to make sure for the public that it's clear that this is I think a solution to reduce the government burden, but at the same time lift people up by exposing kids that may not have that exposure, I think, to some positive things in their communities.
Thanks, Senator. All right, is there any other questions or? Okay, seeing none, I want to thank each of you, and as I said, thank you too for your input on Senate Bill 3 and continued work, and just thank you for the committee for your time and patience today. I know we went through a lot and kind of fast, but I thank everyone who attended today, and having no other business before us, we will call this meeting adjourned. Thank you.